Another element of the circulatory system is the heart. It is located in the chest cavity or thoracic cavity between the lungs, like approximately in the middle of the chest. We usually think about the heart on the left side. No, it's kind of shifted toward the left side, but mostly in the middle. The heart has two halves, left and right, and each half has two chambers. So altogether there are four chambers of the heart, two atria and two ventricles. So on the right heart, we have right atrium and right ventricle. And on the left side, we have left atrium and left ventricle. It's not seen from this picture, but left ventricle is larger. It's kind of roundish in cross section, and it has thicker wall. The chambers of the heart are separated by the valves. There are two valves between the atria and ventricles. They're called atrioventricular valves or AV valves. So one is here and one is here. And there is another pair of valves that separates the ventricles from the blood vessels. And they're called semilunar. And you will see the picture why this is the name. So here's one semilunar valve, and the other we almost don't see because it's covered by this blood vessel. So AV valves, atrioventricular valves, between the atria and ventricles. They have each one has its own name. The one in the right part of the heart is tricuspid valve, and the one that's in the left ventricle is bicuspid, or it's also called mitral valve. So the valves allow the blood to flow only in one direction. From the atria, these valves, the AV valves, from the atria to the ventricles. They open when the atria contract, squeeze the blood, and the blood flows in the ventricle. But then when it's the turn of ventricles to contract, the valves close. So only from atria to the ventricles and not back. So these valves, they are attached to the muscles of the heart. That's called papillary muscles, but not directly. They are attached through stretches of elastic fibers. That's called chorditendini, but you might know them as heartstrings. So when people say that she holds him by the heartstrings, I know it's not what they don't mean it anatomically, but actually the heartstrings really exist in the heart, and they prevent the valves from turning out in the atria. So that's how it really looks like. So these are the muscles, and to the muscles, papillary muscles, and to the muscles we have attached chorditendini, or the heartstrings, and they keep the valve in the correct position when the ventricles contract. The second pair of valves, they're called semilunar valves, and they separate the ventricles from the blood vessels that carry from the arteries that carry the blood from the heart. So in the right ventricle, it's called pulmonary valve, and in the left ventricle, it is aortic valve. So they open when the ventricles contract. So the blood should flow only one direction from the ventricles to the arteries. To prevent this backflow of blood, these valves, they're like a little bit like little bags, and they filled with blood, and they close completely the opening of the blood vessel. So here we have the picture. So when these structures are filled with blood, they're very close to each other, and they block the blood flow back to the ventricles. And this is one of the AV valves, and these are chorditendini, the heartstrings, and this is the valve, and it closes when the ventricle contracts. So just to give you the idea how it's all coordinated. You see that the blood goes from the atria to the ventricle, and the valve allows to do it, the AV valve, because it opens but only in one direction. But when the ventricle contracts, the blood cannot go back to the atrium. It can only go through the semilunar valve to the artery. And the same in the left side of the heart. And this is very beautiful simulation of how the heart works. So these are the valves. This is the AV valve, and this is semilunar valve, and we don't see another semilunar valve because it's here behind this structure. The heartbeats are also associated with the work of the valves. So when we say that we hear how a heart contracts, this lub-dub, lub-dub, lub-dub sound, not exactly, it's not the contractions of the heart, because the muscles do not contract with the sound. They do it very silently. But when the valves close and when the blood hits the valve, that's what creates the sound. So the lub, the strongest sound, comes from the closing of the AV valves, and the second sound, the dub, comes from the closing of the semilunar valves. So that's what the nurse or the doctor hears when they listen to your heart. Sometimes the valves start to malfunction, and that's called valvular heart disease, or VHD. Usually it's when the valves do not close properly or do not open properly. So they might narrow, like it's called stenosis, and here you see there's very little blood that can go through this valve. Or sometimes the valves do not close properly, and that and I say that do not allow the blood flow, but in this case they allow some backflow of blood back into the atria, and because of this, the efficiency of the blood pumping through the heart is much less, and the body gets less blood and less oxygen and less other things like nutrients. The backflow of the blood is often heard like as a murmur, heart murmur. So it sounds like a very cute thing, but it's really a serious problem, because when the blood backflows through the valves, that produces this sound. So why these diseases, why do they originate? They might develop after a heart inflammation. They might result from rheumatic fever. And that's what I showed you in the lecture on the respiration. These bacteria that cause this fever also cause the strep throat. So when you have the sore throat, if you have the chance to check if it's just something or it's strep throat, you should do this, because that eventually can affect your heart. So let's do a very quick break here.